Hi everybody, and welcome back to another training video on Scuba Continuous Intelligence. In this training video, I'm going to be talking about the ability to use functions, and I'm going to go through some examples of how you can use them. And so if you haven't watched the videos on performing calculations or the Explore view, I would highly suggest going back and watching those so you have a good foundation for what we're about to discuss. So in the example that I'll walk through first, what we're looking at here is a query definition that's just looking at a count of events filtered to all events, split by nothing, and it's running over the last 7 days ago to now. And so if I mouse over this, you'll see that there were 5 million events that happened in this 7-day period. And so let's say you wanted to do something like look at the specific days of the week that all of those events happen on, right? So each day of the week is a 24-hour bucket or period of time. And since Scuba requires that there's a timestamp for every row and it's, sequential time series data, you can do something like bring your timestamp in the split by, and you would then be able to dimensionalize this count of events over your timestamps. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that really quick. And you'll really quickly come to learn that, well, the output here is not of much value, right? Your timestamp in this scenario seems to be down to the millisecond. And, what we initially wanted to do was bucket the timestamps into specific days of the week. So what that's going to require is the use of one of the functions that come with Scuba out of the box. So like I had shown in other videos, or our calculations video specifically, you can click into any one of the pills or the input boxes in the query definition and press the equal sign. And once you do that, you'll notice that there's this list of things that appear here. Well, this is Scuba's library of available functions. And you'll see that there's all sorts of different things you can do here, like define if statements or different time manipulations with flows, or determining things like days or time between events or specific days of the week, and so on and so forth. In this case, what we wanted to do was take the timestamp value and roll up each unique timestamp into whatever day of the week it actually lands on. So in this case, we'll use this day of week function. And so I'm just going to click on that. And what you'll notice is whenever you click on any one of the functions in our function library, you have this description that pops out that shows you how you can use it, what inputs it expects for the argument, and then examples of what you can input. So you can actually look at any one of the functions and very easily figure out how to go about getting value out of it. So in this case, similar to our calculations training video, I'm going to go ahead and open up a square bracket here to enter the argument or the value that this day of week function will compute over. Because you can see here it's asking for something like a timestamp, right? It says returns a number from 0 Sunday to 6 Saturday, representing the day of the week that a timestamp falls on in the server time zone. So here I'll open up the brackets to determine what is our timestamp column. And so now that I selected that and run it, you'll see that day of week function will now compute over the timestamps and then provide you the buckets of each day of the week. And so, for example, if I were to run this over the last 14 days ago to now, right, so there'll be 2 Sundays, you'll see that once I run this, that Sunday will now have an increased volume of events because now there's 2 Sundays in this time period that I ran that over. So let's now move on to another example where, let's say for whatever reason, you want to exclude certain days of the week. Let's say that your product or platform or service has a lot of usage midweek, but Sundays and Saturdays really don't get much usage at all. And you're trying to compute an average, or you're trying to calculate a percentage of something, and those outlier days of the week are really skewing that value. So you can again utilize functions to help refine the query that you're building. So in this case, I'm going to click into the filter set here because we're counting all events, but now we don't want to count events that happen on Saturdays or Sunday. So again, I'll press the equal sign in the filter here, and I'll use does not match. And I have to spell it right, so does not match. And so now I'll begin to enter the arguments that it expects. So in this case, I want to enter timestamp, because that was what we were using in our first example. And actually, let me just back up for a second. What we actually want to do first is say does not match day of week. And in day of week, we want to identify that we're looking at timestamp for the day of the week. And then we don't want the day of week timestamped value to match, in this case, let's just say Sunday. And so I'll click out here and I'll expand this to show exactly what we're doing. So does not match is the larger function. And inside of this function, we're doing a sub function, which is day of the week. And so day of the week is going to be computed over Sunday. And so this will return a set of values. And so we're saying does not match the value of Sunday that will be returned for the day of week function in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and click back out here and then just run this query. And you'll notice now that we only have every day of the week besides Saturday. And the same goes for Saturday. We could enter that as another function as well to exclude that in there. So moving on to another example, let's say we wanted to do something like, say, I want to count events for every day but Sunday, but I also want that to be for actions that match purchase. So there is a standard way that you can go about this, which we've showed in other examples, which is I find my action column and then I filter through the values that live in that column to match purchase. Well, let's say you have like 3 or 4 different types of actions or events that have similar values. It starts with PUR. There might be like different kinds of purchases, for example, and you want to calculate for all of them. And let's say you have hundreds of different action types. Rather than doing the search and destroy or pecking through each one of those individual things, you can use the contains function to go ahead and build out that sort of like a wildcarding approach to defining your filter. So I'm just going to hop over to another example over here, and you'll see that what we have built out in this function is this contains clause. So I'll just pop this out here, and in this case we chose contains, and the column of action will have the argument or the value beginning with PUR, right? Because purchase begins with PUR, and maybe you have several columns of a purchase nature that begin with a certain subset of values. You could use something like the contains function to go ahead and make that definition. And when you run the query over that time period, you'll notice that now every single day of the week here has those different values in them. So another interesting or valuable function that you guys would probably use a lot is our rounding function. So in this example here, we are taking a square root, which ends in a decimal, and we're nesting this square root function into the round function. So let's go ahead and run this against square root, so we can see exactly what the value will be. In this case, we'll use an existing measure called average spend per user. And so I'm going to go ahead and return this. So you'll see that this value returns a decimal, right? And there's a lot of different examples as to, when you have a decimal and, you kind of want to clean it up. There is the option to do it with chart options, but let's say for whatever reason, your use case requires the use of a function. Well, in this case, we can go ahead and select round. And when I click that, you'll see that, again, it gives a good description here. And we're following a very similar format where you enter the column as an argument and then the value that you want it to round to. In this case, we wanted to have it round our square root value. So I'm going to again enter square root. and then say that we want to get the square root of average spend per user, and it's going to round whatever the square root function here returns for this average spend per user measure. And when I go ahead and press go, you'll see that now it gives us a clean 5 instead of that 5.35. So this is the end of the training session. Again, to reiterate, whenever you press equals in any one of the input boxes, it shows the list of available functions that you can use. If you click in to any of them, it'll show you a good description and some examples on how to use that function. And if you have any other questions or are interested in learning about other features in the product, please watch the rest of our videos or reach out to help@scuba.io. Thanks.